All right, so we're going to continue the conversation on drones, and we're going to move into our next discussion about the wider implications, ethics, and the reality of the skies becoming filled with increasing drone traffic. Please welcome onto the stage our next panel with moderator Mike Butcher.
Is he introducing us?
Hello, everyone. Is this thing on?
Oh, okay.
Did you switch me on, guys? Hey, come on then.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hi, man. Hi.
Where am I going?
Is it switched on? Yeah. I can't hear myself.
No, I can't hear you either.
I can't. Can you
Nope.
got one, two?
No.
Oh, hello. There we go.
Good.
Check.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Jeez, I hate technical fails.
Yeah.
So, welcome to my airport lounge. As we can see, we've ripped off from Dublin Airport our new drone airport. My name is Mike Butcher from TechCrunch. I'm the editor at large.
Okay.
I look incredibly small in this huge chair. But anyway, it's going to be fun. I'm on Mike Butcher at Twitter, at Mike Butcher, if you want to complain about anything. Right, so we've had fantastic presentations about the area of drones. Now we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion. I think, gentlemen, what we need to sort of unpack are sort of the regulatory aspects, the commercial aspects, the threat scenarios potentially, perhaps. But just to give everyone a heads up, now we've obviously heard from Jonathan Downey from Airware earlier, just now. We also have Jay Bregman in the middle here, who you probably know him from his previous role, which he's recently just left from as CEO of Hailo, with the extremely useful taxi drone app. No, obviously not a drone yet. But now he is getting into the field of drones. He's planning on launching a new company, I gather, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
It's code name Up in the Air. That's my little joke. The name is not actually decided on yet, but we'll hear more from him. And then lastly, we have Christian Sanz, from Skycatch, who are building drones, literally building them end to end. So, gentlemen, first of all, it's an inevitability, isn't it, that drones are here to stay? When do we think that there's going to be a real sort of mainstream acceptance? This is going to acceptance of the concept behind drones and their sort of day-to-day uses when people won't think at all about seeing something fly past quickly. Christian, what do you think?
I think people are already getting used to the idea of drones in space. I think drones just flying around over your heads, it's going to be a while before that happens. There's a lot of safety things that need to be worked out. Jonathan just spoke about that a little while ago. But it's going to be a while before we see that. I think I see a lot of the operation of drones in areas where it's very complex and very dangerous, like mining, job sites, construction, like Jonathan said, agriculture. These are all areas where a drone is far less dangerous than the things that are in it.
There's a major acceptance in the field of business and enterprise and, as you say, sort of major manufacturing or agriculture. There's absolute general acceptance that this is going to happen.
Right. But the days of you seeing drones flying around and dropping things off in cities is going to be far out until we figure out the safety components. And I think that what Jonathan explained a little earlier, in areas in Africa, for instance, being able to deliver something, you're not really flying over any population, so you're basically off the grid, and you're not really endangering anyone.
Except the elephants.
Except the elephants, but the elephants don't complain that much.
Jonathan, you have raised $40 million from Google Ventures, Andreessen Horowitz, and Kleiner Perkins. They obviously making a big bet on this, that this is a future business which they can be very early into, but potentially control, obviously.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they're making a bet on a couple key things. One is that drones are going to become pervasive and used in a variety of different industries, not just for entertainment, but for businesses, and that the applications they'll be used for will be very diverse. And so that's why building a platform like what we're doing at Airware, we believe makes sense.
So if we've got Airware doing sort of the Wintel of drones, the DOS for drones, if you will, and we've got drone builders, where do you fit in, Jay, with your next venture? What is where do you see the gaps for entrepreneurs?
So I think it's hard to pin it down to something specific, but we've talked about. I view drones as a terrible name. Until we change that name, I think it's going to be really hard to get widespread acceptance. We've all got to work on that problem. They're a subset of
friendly
robots.
sky helpers,
Yeah, that's possible. Up in the air.
mechanical bees.
But really, what we're talking about here is autonomous flying robots, and yes, there are safety concerns with them around particularly privacy, and don't want it taking pictures where it shouldn't take pictures of me or my children or what have you, and also security in terms of shouldn't be flying into French nuclear power plants or wherever it is. Those are problems, however, that our view is can be solved through code and instantiated through laws, and so we believe that those safety issues can be tackled sooner rather than later if there are companies that are laser focused on solving just those particular problems and extending them across all manufacturers, and all countries, really. It's an ambitious task, but one that I think is possible and works to everybody's benefit.
I mean, it seems to me that if you think about the development of the internet industry since the mid-90s, this is sort of 1996 in drone world, isn't it?
Oh, I think it's like just before the introduction of the personal computer.
That early.
I think.
Yeah, it's that early. I mean, this is the age where people are building some of these drones in their garages, like the Altair 8080s, and the government has these like big, powerful mainframes that they're able to use, but only for a small set of use cases. And until we see drones that are being used by kind of regular people and regular businesses, I think that's where we are in time.
I think this is the homebrew computer club stage of the market development, which is, so I totally agree with Jonathan. I think that things are going to develop, though, more quickly. I think there will be parallels to the way that the PC revolution came about. It's just that everything will happen faster. If we've seen the PC revolution versus, the development of mobile, which exceeded expectations in every possible way in terms of growth, I think that robotics will be even faster than that because we have so much connective tissue now, and so many more entrepreneurs that are willing to go in and tackle the hard problems that are needed to make all of this work.
Let me take you up on that because you've raised $40 million. Skycatch has raised $13 million. This doesn't seem to me like quite the homebrew computer club that you might characterize it. If people wanted to look at the market and think, this is something I want to get into, surely they've got to raise enormous amounts of cash.
Hey man, I'm coming from an industry where basically if you haven't raised $1 billion, you're not, or $100 million, you're not worth anything. So, that certainly doesn't scare off me. It shouldn't scare off anybody else. I think that there are going to be hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to be invested in this space. The opportunity is so transformative. I mean, I think people see this as the next PC revolution rather than just the next smartphone revolution, where ultimately the rewards will be enormous and the societal impact will be enormous.
I think
we're just at the beginning.
I think we're about to start seeing a lot more companies being created by entrepreneurs in the space, companies who are building the hardware and sensors for drones, companies who are building the drones themselves, companies who are building purely software applications for drones and connecting the drone data with existing infrastructure, companies who are building and operating drones as a service across a number of different verticals and industries. So I think, I think there's just going to be an explosion of different companies in this space.
If you look at how many companies out there are actually buying a lot of these drones and how they're using them, most are using them for testing purposes. Rio Tinto, the Bechtels of the world. All these guys are not massively buying these things. They're basically just allocating resources to their R&D team to figure them out. And that's why the reference to the homebrew, computer club comes from, because industries haven't been buying these computers at massive, or these drones at massive scale. We work with them and we try to some of our clients, we spend months trying to figure out how they can fit a drone into their workflow. And we've managed to do it. But it's a learning process, and I think now we're seeing these massive companies, these massive industries jumping into and learning about this new technology and now demanding it and moving it from R&D to, okay, this group has to implement this.
Isn't there the case, though, that somewhere along the line, regulatory authorities are just going to turn around and go, guys, that's it. You know, we're not interested in drones flying around. We're quite worried enough about another 9/11 happening, let alone a drone flying into a jet engine. In fact, in Southend in the UK, there was a drone crash near a commercial airliner. There was a drone flying in near Manchester City Airport. In fact, a drone carrying an Albanian flag caused a near riot at a football match recently. So there's a whole load of other regulatory issues, and the regulators surely are there quite behind.
Well, so I think those regulatory issues, Mike, have already happened. I mean, the U.S. has put a blanket ban on commercial use until the FAA comes in and gives some recommendations at some point in the future. Who knows when that will be? They've never done anything in less than 10 years.
Are you going to end up having to pay a lot of lobbyists for Capitol Hill to...
I worry about both extreme ends of the spectrum. I worry about the complete lack of regulation in some of these countries, and that's leading to near collisions with manned aircraft and kind of almost lawlessness around the use of drones. And I worry equally about the other end of the spectrum, which is this complete commercial ban in the United States, and what could happen, which is regulations around commercial operations that are so oppressive, only the largest companies in the world will be able to push enough paper and dot enough I's and cross enough T's to be able to actually use the technology.
The one thing, though, that's interesting is I think everybody shares the same goals. I mean, none of the people here on this panel want this technology to be misused. It's not good for business, and it's not good for, for the morality of what it is that we're trying to do, which is to bring robots into society for good. That's what everybody's here for. Regulators share exactly the same goals. So it's really just a question of figuring out the right mix of alignment and getting it right this time, as opposed to others. That probably is going to happen in Europe before it happens in the United States.
I think it's just the process you go through when new technology is born, kind of like the internet, right? You see all this misuse happen for the first few years, and then regulatory environment starts coming in, and things start changing. I think it's just going to be a few years. Companies are going to be born out of the safety side of things. Companies are going to be providing safety, regulatory backing or technology. So I think it's going to be 5 to 10 years before we just really get this down. But it's just going to be the process. There are going to be people misusing drones, and that's just going to alert people to actually do something about it. I think we're learning more and we're advancing more as we see these bad things happen.
Why are we thinking of drones just as flying machines? Why can't we think in a more sort of holistic sense about sort of driverless lorries or things like that? Why are we thinking only in terms of little quadcopters?
So I think drones have this unique. They make the use case more urgent, right? So because the drones can fly, right, and flying is a relatively new thing to humanity, then basically they can do a little bit more damage and not only damage by physical damage, but also taking pictures where we weren't able to take pictures before than otherwise could. Whereas, we already have cars, and so having cars without drivers is a new thing, right? But it's something that basically doesn't seem as alien to us, as that. But you're right, Mike. I think the real issue here is not whether they're drones or whether they're cars. The real issue is that they're autonomous technologies. And I think humans want and need, and regulators want and need, an override on all autonomous technologies. And that's going to be really what the push is for going forward.
There's a number of other differences I'd add to what Jay mentioned. One is that in almost every other form of autonomous robotics, if something goes wrong, the robot can just stop. Your autonomous lorry can just pull over and stop. Your autonomous bus can potentially stop. When you have a flying vehicle, that's no longer really an option in many cases. And so that really just adds
another... It's not just
another...
going to hang in midair.
It's not going to. And so that really adds an element and a layer of complexity that doesn't exist in a number of other applications. I think another difference also is the kind of orders of magnitude in which there are potential cost savings. For an autonomous car, you can replace the driver and you no longer have to pay them to get you from point A to point B. But on the aerial side of things, a manned aircraft is just orders of magnitude more expensive to deploy on a flight to take some of the same pictures as you could a much, much smaller aircraft where the aircraft is less expensive, the maintenance is less expensive, the fuel is less expensive. You know, at every layer of the stack, there's kind of huge cost
We need
savings.
smaller people.
We need smaller drone pilots, and that's actually a question I wanted to put to you guys. And Jay, I think this is something that I know you've spoken about before. I mean, we're familiar with the scenario of, well, not to pull it too indelicately, but drones being flown over Afghanistan, taking out interesting-looking people from the Taliban. Those are flown by pilots from the US. Now, drone pilots or autonomous drones, now, do they require pilots? Can one pilot fly many different drones at the same time? Are we talking about sort of an air traffic control system for hundreds of drones at any one time? Or how does it work in practice?
Well, so I'm not quite sure, and I can't comment on how the U.S. military or other militaries operate their drones. I know there's a big debate about whether there should be autonomous use of drones. The UK just came out with a report on it. You know, but ultimately, I think the vision ought to be having trained pilots that can oversee a very large number of drones rather than controlling each individual one. Because they're autonomous, and if they're autonomous, they don't need to be controlled, they need oversight, and that's why you can get that ratio up. And then, you know, Jonathan, I'm sure could build, you know, systems that could have, you know, hundreds or even, you know, thousands of drones under one control.
But these are not pilots; they're like computer game players, aren't they? I mean, you're a pilot yourself. You didn't go into flying planes so you could sit, you know, in a darkened room.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be any fun to me. In the United States right now, while there may not be kind of full commercial regulations enabling the use of drones, there are processes around which you can be flying drones today, including the Section 333 exemption process, which right now the Motion Picture Association of America has gotten a number of exemptions, and we're seeing more and more of these exemptions go through every week. Right now, the FAA is only approving one pilot per one vehicle operations, and in many cases that person actually has to be a pilot. Our goal at Airware, and is shared by a number of other companies in the space, is to create technology that enables these to be used in such an easy and automatic way that it becomes more like grabbing a ladder to do a rooftop inspection than it does, you know, calling the FAA, getting a flight plan, and deploying an aircraft. We want this to be a very, very simple tool for people to be used. And so it's our goal, and many others share it, to you know, not require pilots, enable multiple aircraft to be controlled by single operators. We recently announced a partnership with NASA to actually help with the development of an air traffic management system in the United States for small unmanned aircraft, because the manned traffic management system is not really meant to enable fully autonomous aircraft, and it's not meant to operate that large of a number of aircraft.
Where is the opportunity here in terms of markets, for instance? So obviously, as you say, there are exemptions being granted more and more frequently in the US. I mean, for instance, here we are in Ireland. Would Ireland be a good market for drones, or the UK, or Germany, or France? Who has the edge, as it were, in the regulation of drones and the market opportunity?
I think it just really comes down to demand. So which companies actually benefit from this new technology? For instance, for us in construction, we don't see ourselves as drone makers. We see ourselves as data gatherers. So we built the drones so that we can gather data faster. And that was the only reason. If there's another method to gather data as fast as we were able to gather data, we would have done that. But the way construction, mining, and all these different industries are using this data is what makes the difference. For instance, in construction, we have one of the largest projects in California gathering data almost every hour. Planners, they go in every hour, going in and overlay our CAD files on top of these maps to check to see if the building has been built the right way. Before, they would send 20, 50 people out, take photos, compare that to CAD files. They're saving so much time. Not only that, but they're also keeping people safe, because going inside a construction site is very dangerous. You have all these dozers going around. So is that demand, is when you actually are able to save company money and keep people safe, that will draw the technology back in. And going back to autonomous and having all these things flying, do we want to have pilots? And I think it's trust. Once people trust that these things can actually do the job, people will start getting used to these things flying around autonomously.
What about you, Jay?
Well,
What
so,
do you think about the opportunity?
My view on this
market?
is I think Ireland is well poised to be the market leader. I think they have one of the most advanced certification systems for commercial drones. And as to the question of demand, well, demand is a function of supply. Meaning that basically, if there are more drones out there, and it's more easy to deploy drones, it's more easy for entrepreneurs to create drone companies and to house them in a particular place, there's an ecosystem that develops, very similar to Hailo, where when we came to Dublin, people said, you're crazy, it's a 2 million person city. It's, and actually what happened was there was so much supply of taxi drivers who were eager for work that created intense demand that just ballooned all over the country, and now we're coast to coast, and it's one of our biggest territories. So I have a belief that and the UK, which is also looking at this very seriously, will be leaders, and also they'll do it for the simple reason that they want to provide a competitive advantage over the United States, and I think that competitiveness is a good thing for everybody.
In the technology world, the huge irony, of course, is that when mobile phone makers come out with new types of smartphones, the phablets, the big screen Android phone has been out for years, and yet when Apple brings out the iPhone 6 Plus, everybody acts like this thing is entirely new. Now, Google and Amazon have both declared an interest in drones, and famously Amazon put out a hilarious video of books being delivered by drones. Google has even released videos of a winged drone dropping things from the sky on a piece of string virtually in Australia. Is it going to take a big company like that to effectively snap the market into a really sort of fire the starting gun?
It's definitely helpful. It's definitely helpful, but I think it's scrappy companies who are really hungry and willing to go work with actual companies are the ones who are going to create the industry. I think that a lot of these companies eventually will get acquired by these big companies, but the fact that these big companies are getting involved, it's helping us all.
Absolutely. Airware is involved in the Small UAS Coalition in the United States, which is a coalition of companies who are kind of collectively lobbying different entities in the U.S. government, including the FAA, around regulatory affairs. And Amazon and Google's involvement in that with a number of different small, scrappy companies is definitely hugely helpful. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
My view on this is slightly different and contrarian, which is, I think about this with reference to the PC revolution, and I think that the kind of the Googles and the Amazons are sort of the IBMs of the age. They didn't invent the personal computer, right? Apple did, and Apple was nothing at that stage, and neither was Microsoft for that matter. So I think we have yet to see who the real leaders will be in this space, and I think the incumbents, although they have said they're getting into it, they produced some videos of it. It remains to be seen how serious that commitment is, and really how they can, whether they can be outgunned in the same way as they themselves outgunned somebody, 10 or 20 years ago to get to where they were.
I share your viewpoint with the incumbents being all of the companies who have been building drones for like 10 years or more.
Sure,
I think those are definitely the companies who are going to get caught,
Yeah.
Waiting for the commercial market to reach a big enough critical mass for them to try to enter it, only to find out that they weren't involved enough early on to actually have developed the right products and the right technology.
I think
There's
the
too much
companies that are
legacy.
going to win are going to be focusing on adding value, and that's it.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I do hope that this ends up being the drone Christmas, when little Johnny and Jane wake up on Christmas morning and find their autonomous drone, and that's probably when we see the market start to take off. And perhaps we need to come up with a new name. So, flying bee robots it is. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks a lot. That was good.